My name is Daniel Diaz. I am the Executive Director of Citizens for Sound Money. Before I continue, and who knows what sound money is? By a show of hands. All right, one person, and I think the other gentleman who has a lot of gold in his backyard. Sound money is gold and silver. Why is it called sound money? Well, because back in the day, when they debased the currency, you could tell the difference by dropping the coin on a table or on the ground, and it would have a distinct sound. So sound money, it's pure gold and silver, has a specific sound versus it being mixed with copper or other metals. So that's where the term sound money came from. So Citizens Sound Money, we advocate the use of sound money, and we also advocate legislation to bring back the use of sound money. So for those of you that didn't know, the United States used sound money as a currency for 195 years as an original coin, and eventually it was dollars backed by gold and silver. And since 1971, we've gone off the gold standard, and we've lost 97% of our purchasing power since 1971. A perfect example of this was in 1979. We were off the standard, but it took a while for us to get to the point where we're at now. A home was $73,000, the average home price. You could buy a home for 268 ounces of gold back then. Today, the average home price is around $513,000. Take a guess at how much gold it would take to buy a house. 268 roughly, actually a little less now, I think it's like 250 ounces, because gold has maintained its purchasing power. Here's another example that we used with the legislature. In 1971, 55 gallon barrel oil cost $2.45 because we were tied to the gold standard. Today, in dollars, that's around $90. But in gold, it was 0.07 ounces. Today, that same barrel of oil is only 0.04 ounces of gold. The value of gold has maintained and actually strengthened against the dollar, while the dollar has lost its value. And a more recent example, January of 2020, before COVID hit, we had $20 trillion in national deficit, in national debt. Today, that's $34 trillion of debt. What does that mean? That means we've added 70% more currency to the currency supply in this country, meaning we have a 70% inflation rate in just the last 4 years. That's 70%. And we wonder why everything is so expensive. Well, the Federal Reserve and the US Treasury and the Congress are just spending like crazy. Where does this currency come from? The 34,000, this right here, used to be backed by this, right? 110 years ago, $20 was an ounce of gold. What could you buy with $20? You could buy a tuxedo, a top hat, pocket watch, maybe some flowers, and some chocolates for your date, some shoes for 20 bucks. What can you buy for 20 bucks today? Not even a Happy Meal, right? But what could you buy with an ounce of gold today? Gold's a little over $2,000. If you wanted to, you could buy a top hat, a tuxedo, flowers, pocket watch, shoes, chocolate, and flowers for your date. Because gold has maintained its purchasing power, not this piece of paper, right? So this right here is the smallest denomination of gold you can find in production. It's 1/1000th of an ounce. It's just under $4, right? So these 5 bills of gold equal just under 20. What would you rather take after that small example? Would you rather take this or less than $20? Yes, gold.
I
can show you, I can hand it out and you guys can pass it around and take a look at it. Here you go.
You would have to give it back.
Well, yes, give it back. So that's how we start. It's a much shorter version, but that's how we. Yeah.
Can it be copyrighted?
Yes, gold and silver.
You said.
How can it be protected? I'm coming.
What?
You said gold and silver.
Yes.
You skipped silver. How's it done?
Silver has had very similar effect. Same thing with gold and silver. There's charts that I use gold because most of the examples we use are in gold. This is a gold debit card. I was going to use an example. So gold has outperformed silver with keeping up with inflation. But because silver is more of an industrial metal, and the military industrial complex uses something like 100 ounces or more of silver in each warhead, Tomahawk missile, silver is used in computers. There's this interesting dynamic with the free markets and Wall Street where they create futures contracts and they short silver a year, 2 years to keep the price of silver down. Even though the demand of silver is higher than gold because silver has so many industrial uses, stock market and the large banks and corporations are suppressing it through futures contracts to keep it low.
Okay, very compelling arguments. What's your solution?
The solution is the Sound Money Act. HB 697 and SB 750, the companion bill. It does 4 things, not just in Florida. We've actually had this bill in over the state. The federal
HB 697, and what's the other one?
HB 697 and SB 750, they're companion bills. House and Senate. We're in over 24 states right now, so over most of the country is heading in this direction. It does 4 things. It makes gold and silver legal tender specie, and it gets rid of all tax liabilities against the purchase and sale of gold. Right now in Florida, if you try to buy less than $500 worth of gold or silver, you have to pay sales tax. You buy 501, no sales tax. It's a regressive tax for those who don't really have the money to buy a full ounce of gold or multiple ounces of silver. That's the first thing it does. Second thing it does, it authorizes the state of Florida to build or contract out with a third party the establishment of a depository. So the gold and silver is within the territorial borders of the state. The third thing that does, which I think is the most important, it makes gold and silver transactional. We digitize gold, just like we digitize the dollar for our bank accounts, and then we can spend it with a debit card or send it like Venmo. Now, how does this benefit business owners? If you choose as a business to not accept it because it's enabling legislation, if you choose not to accept gold and silver, that's fine, because this debit card, when I swipe it, sells the gold at spot, converts it to dollars, and you as a merchant pay your 2 to 4% fee on credit card transactions. But if you are a smart businessman, I like to think, or a businesswoman, you'd accept gold and silver digitally. And the basis points are between 22 and 100, which means you're saving about 2 to 400% on transaction fees if you choose to accept gold and silver as legal tender for your business. So this is a very innovative solution. It's novel because of the electronic. It's not novel because for 10,000 years, we've valued gold and silver as money, and really for the last 3,000 years, it has been money. So,
what's the downside? And why was it you think it's going to take 3 years?
Well, there's
just my handicapping, but
it's very novel. So we give the chief financial officer and the treasurers a lot of leeway on declaring what is legal tender and so forth. There's a lot of nuances. On our committee, we have a legislative committee at Citizens for Sound Money. We have 2 of the top legal tender experts in the country. There's 4 states right now that have gold and silver as legal tender: Utah, Oklahoma, Wyoming, and Arkansas. Arkansas is the most recent. So you can take those gold bills that you have and spend it like cash, pay your taxes and so forth. The legal tender part is not really the novel idea. So in Florida, we have the whole bill, but it's not gotten any traction. So right now, we've pared it down, and we're trying to get the first part passed because 4 states have already done it. So we're adding it as an amendment to our prime co-sponsor, Representative Chip LaMarca, on one of his bills that he's running for the Department of Financial Services, and we're waiting to hear back literally today from the Speaker whether he's going to get the thumbs up to add legal tenders onto his bill. So that's why it's going to take multiple years. The whole package, we've met with 83 government officials on the House, Senate, and the executive branch, and a majority of them are in favor of this. We know if we got a hearing, it passed. But it's so complicated because there's so many ramifications. A depository, where's that going to be? Who's going to manage that? What does it mean for taxation? Do municipalities have to take gold and silver? These are all questions that the CFO's office and other legislators are asking, and it's not that they hate the bill, they love it. It's just very complicated, and because of what's happened this year, where the last 2 years we've had a lot of bills and they're moving fast, now they've cut down, and there's just not enough time for the staff to do a full analysis, and that's what we kind of run into. We talk to the staff at the CFO's office, the the committees, and the House and the Senate. So it's just a lot of moving parts, a lot of things that the legislature needs to wrap their heads around. And it's not just here, it's happening in every single state that we're in. Utah, New Hampshire, South Carolina, Iowa, all of them very similar issues where they love the idea, but it's just too much one package.
Is it just gold and silver, or is it precious metals in general?
Well, it's only gold and silver because you don't know this, is that the Constitution, Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1 states that states can only make gold and silver coin tender for the payment of debts. That's it. No other precious metals, no Bitcoin, nothing. Only the federal government can make other precious metals. But states can only make gold and silver tender.
Florida is a very large market.
Yes.
Fantastic state to get you moving here. What do you think is a tipping point in number of states or key states that would really make this a viable national option in commerce?
I think if Florida and Texas alone pass it, it's just going to reverberate. And really, what this does is sets up a parallel economic system to the Federal Reserve System. How many of you know that the Federal Reserve is not a government agency? It's a private corporation. It's owned by shareholders. You know who those shareholders are that own the Federal Reserve that print our currency? The largest banks in this country, Bank of America, Citigroup, JP Morgan Chase. You know what they get paid? A 6% dividend every single year. This is public. Just go up the Federal Reserve, look up the shareholders and the distributions. So the bankers are making money off of the debt that the United States is issuing and the Federal Reserve pays. And since the dollar is no longer backed by gold, where's this new money coming from? Back then, you mine more gold, you pay, and that's how inflation was. But inflation is just more debt. So we have to borrow more money, pay interest on the money we're paying to pay the interest on the loans that we just took out from the Federal Reserve. And the corporation of the Federal Reserve just keeps earning more money and earning more money off the backs of the American people. It's crazy, right?
Nothing official here, but I do want, you've heard about this briefly. Show of hands, how many think that NFIB ought to be balloting our members on this over the next year? How many think we ought to be taking a closer look at this
We
idea?
should look at it.
Every single hand, yeah. Yes.
Okay, I know there's a few currencies that are backed by gold, and exactly where is the gold stored? Like, where is that?
Well, there's only one government right now that has issued a gold CBDC. That's Zimbabwe. No other government is backed by gold. They're the first country. And then Indonesia just started paying their postal workers in digital gold. One of the companies, actually, when we did the briefing in New Hampshire, we testified Kinesis money, they had the contract with Indonesia. And that's the company that Indonesia is working with. So it'll be a public-private partnership. Because there's solutions right now. This is another company out of the UK called Lint. The president and founder was here last week lobbying with us, talking to Senator Albertin and others. So this is the first time in human history where every single nation on the planet is using a currency backed by nothing. There's over 6,000 fiat currencies since the Chinese introduced money back how many thousand years ago. That have been in existence. Take a guess of how many still exist? 0. Every single one has gone to 0. Because it's backed by nothing. Even if it was backed by base metal, like copper, it's still worth something. But every single fiat currency has gone to 0, and the dollar is not going to be an exception.
Well, Daniel, you can at least say you have piqued some interest.